Welcome, everyone, to episode 19 of the Looks Like a Movie podcast. My name's Kevin. I'm here with Doug and Owen, and today we're going to be talking about Francis Ford Coppola's 1979 movie Apocalypse Now. We also watched the documentary Hearts of Darkness, a filmmaker's apocalypse, to go along with it. And at the end of the episode, we're going to cover some news as usual. So, as always, share the episode, like, comment, and subscribe if you're on YouTube. Follow our Twitter. And before we get into anything else, do we want to quickly talk about anything else we watched this week? I could start. All I watched was Fast and Furious movies, so
Yeah,
I
I
watched 5 of them, and it's been a while. And Fast Five is as good as they say it is. It's really a movie. I like the Fast and Furious movies though, so I'm a little bit biased. But Fast Five is a really fucking cool movie. Yeah, that's it. That's all I watched.
I watched the new David Lowry flick.
Right.
Shout out
Peter
David
Pan.
Lowry.
Yeah, Peter Pan and Wendy. It's
Yeah.
pretty cool. I'm not gonna like recommend it, but it's like if you guys feel a desire to watch it, I would be like go for it. It's like not a bad movie. It's just like
Yeah.
it's whatever. It's a Disney movie with a little bit of kind of film, like a real filmmaker flair in it. It's chill. I also watched, fucking Guardians of the Galaxy, but
Oh yeah. That
yeah.
as well. I was gonna mention that because it's like I watched like all these Fast and Furious movies, which are like these kind of like big blockbuster movies from the past 20 years,
Yeah.
and then it's like Guardians of the Galaxy, and I was like, and I think I someone commented on my Letterboxd review like hating on it, and they were like, how'd you give this 3 stars? How'd you give Guardians of the Galaxy 3 stars? And then like you just gave Fast Five 4.5 stars. It's like because this is like a good movie. Yeah,
Yeah, because Fast Five
this
is
is
like a
like
good
yeah
movie.
the literal like group of like people in the Fast and Furious movies is like what the Avengers wish they could be. Like they're so much more interesting than the Avengers. They're like the modern American superhero, except they're just like normal people who just can't die. I don't know. Anyway,
Yeah. Oh,
Owen,
what
what'd
did
you
you
watch?
watch this week?
So yeah, I know. I watched a bunch of stuff. I did some Ridley Scott stuff. I watched The Counselor from 2013 with Michael Fassbender, which I liked. Then I watched Exodus: God of Kings, which I also liked. And then I did another, which will kind of tie into Apocalypse Now. I watched Youth Without a Youth, which is a late career FFC that I really, really enjoyed. And
FFC.
yeah, I think I really like his late career stuff. I'm gonna watch Tetro probably later today.
Um.
I'm excited.
Oh, I'll put this on pod. I think it might be fun. Because obviously, Megalopolis is going to be a big thing next year. But I think that it might be fun for like later, like when we have another kind of week where we want to talk about not like an older release. It would be fun if we do a pod episode about like the late career FFC and do those like 3 movies from the
Yeah,
2000s.
because I have a hitch or a little feeling that those three like late career movies are all gonna be like really high on my ranking for him.
Yeah.
So
And those
far just
movies
because
are Youth Without Youth, Tetro, and Twix,
Twix,
right?
yeah.
Yeah.
He's cooking in that weird era. He's this old man, and he's no one cares, and he's making movies for like $5 million, and no one's seeing them, and he's absolutely cooking,
Yeah.
and I love it to see it.
Yeah, I don't know. I kind of want to watch The Conversation the most, but I'd
Oh,
be down.
yeah.
But I'd be
Well,
down for those
Yeah,
2000s
no,
ones.
I definitely like Ridley. It'd be tough. It should be tougher to do a Ridley Scott episode because he's just so much movies. But we could kind of. I think there's definitely some that we could talk about because he has a lot of gems.
and you
Yeah,
meant Francis Ford Coppola?
I meant
Or
Francis Ford Coppola's Conversation, but yeah, same.
Oh, yeah,
Um,
no, I was thinking about the counselor, but
yeah,
yeah, I think we should talk about some Ridley eventually.
I'm down for that
yes,
as
we're gonna
well.
do
Yeah.
something special for
If
Napoleon because it might be his last movie.
if we do the
Uh,
conversation,
Is that like a rumor, or is that like
no, it's just because he's old as balls.
yeah, right. Okay. I think
if
that's
we
just the standard now for most of these legendary directors. Is just like this might be their last movie because they're
yeah
90 years old.
yeah
Yeah, we gotta take what we
well
can get. We gotta
Yeah,
appreciate every fucking morsel we get out of these old fuckers.
yeah, exactly.
you could do
Anyway,
because the conversation is tied with blowout and blow up, so that could be a good three because they're all it's like a
Oh,
thematic trilogy by different directors.
that's
interesting.
interesting. That would be fun. Okay, yeah, we'll talk about it. We'll figure
Yeah,
it out.
yeah,
Yeah,
Sorry,
yeah.
guys.
We'll do some more planning when we're not recording. Okay. Anyway, you guys want to talk about Apocalypse Now?
Yeah,
Now?
so Apocalypse Now. I'm gonna go out on a limb. We all love this movie, I would say,
Yeah,
even more than
yeah,
just like. I think we are
yeah.
all
yeah.
very,
It's a strong love.
yeah, we all are very, very pro Apocalypse Now on this
Pro
podcast.
apocalypse.
Yeah.
Um,
Shocker, one of the best movies ever. Turns out to be one of the best movies ever.
I think I literally tweeted something like that when I was like,
Yeah.
It doesn't happen all the time.
it doesn't.
Right?
No, it doesn't
Yeah.
happen all the
No, it
time.
doesn't.
But yeah, so we watched Apocalypse Now, and I think one of the biggest kind of talking points about this in terms of like modern conversation when you talk about Apocalypse Now is like, what version did you watch? Because
Yeah.
Francis Ford Coppola does have this thing that kind of like started with Apocalypse Now,
Yeah.
and has now leaked into a couple of his other movies where he kind of like he has like this like impulsive need to go back and re-edit his movies from like 50 years ago.
Yeah.
And there are 3 official Francis Ford Coppola like released edits of Apocalypse Now, and then there is a 4th kind of like fan edit. Where's the camera? Fan edit that kind of goes around that some people also talk about. And the 3 edits are obviously the theatrical cut, the Redux cut, which is like 3.5 hour, like 3 hours and like some change.
Yeah.
And then there's the newest one that just had like was released like 2019, which is the final cut, which is like a little under 3 hours.
Yeah.
Those are like the 3 official cuts. And then there's floating around on the internet, there is what is called the assembly cut online, which is like 5.5 hours long.
Yeah. Which I'm not watching.
No, yeah. We all watched the theatrical cut for
Yeah.
this. And I don't think we planned for that. I think it just kind of happened, right? Like,
Yeah, no, because we did not I mean, we should have discussed which version we were watching.
Yeah,
but we
I
did
mean, it's
not
fine.
discuss which one we were watching. That was just the one that was the most
Well,
easily
I just
accessible to
noticed
me.
you 2 watched it, so it's like, okay, I'll watch
Yeah,
that version.
that makes sense. Yeah. No, but I I mean, I pretty much just like looked it up and I was like, which version is the best one to watch? And it seemed like a lot of the consensus was the theatrical one, and that's the one that was like available to rent for me anyway. So I was like, this kind of works out. But I'd be interested to see the other ones.
yeah. I think it will almost be to like have like a real conversation about the movie and like the fullest depth. You kind of have to like watch multiple cuts. Obviously, we're just a couple shitters. We're not like we're not real scholars.
Well, one of
here.
the things is like in the documentary, they like address stuff that is like involved in the other cuts. Like there's like the whole that long what is it, like a French plantation or something that's
Yeah,
like
so
not
it's
in the theatrical cut, and
yeah.
that's like a pretty decent part of the documentary too.
Yeah, so my understanding is that and they talk about
Nice.
talk about it in the document. That's crazy. They talk about it in the documentary where and they're like, oh yeah, we cut it because like we couldn't make it work. And even Francis Ford Coppola in Hearts of Darkness, remember, is like there's like footage of him on set talking, or on set, a conversation of him talking about how like this is fucking terrible. Like these aren't the
Yeah,
actors
no,
I
I
want.
have I have like a list of like all the like, quotes from the documentary because I was like, this is maybe the most quotable documentary I've ever watched.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to go on a limb and I want to say, just to like straight up, is this kind of like the most essential like documentary about movies ever made? Like this is crazy.
I think it's probably up there.
It's definitely like kind of an important must. Like it's an essential.
I made like a weird comparison when I was reviewing it, but I compared it to like to Free Solo because it because from my perspective, at least with documentaries, it was like I didn't really get into like documentary stuff until I watched Free Solo, and now I would say like most of the documentaries I watch are like focused on like politics or like social issues or like something really important, and that was like a documentary that I just watched because it was like, oh, here's just like a really cool subject about a dude who does like a really cool thing, and I was so invested in this thing that I didn't care about whatsoever like prior to that. Like I didn't know anything about like solo climbing, so then it was like to compare that with like where I am now with documentaries and watch this movie that is about movies, which is like something that I am so clearly passionate about. I was like, this is like a cool little like arc, because it's just like, this is like what watching Free Solo would have been like for me if Free Solo was just about the thing that I care about most instead. So I thought that was really interesting, and I think like in like from that perspective, like with a documentary about movies, that's what makes this so interesting, because it like shows you the process in a way that I don't know many other documentaries do.
Yeah. Crazy documentary. But okay, so all right. So Apocalypse Now, right?
Right.
Is a movie that is based off of the 1902 novella Heart of Darkness by Joseph Conrad. And the novella follows very similar structure, which is basically about a guy that has to go kill, assassinate, like a rogue officer named Kurtz. Obviously lots of changes in the novella, or lots of liberties are taken with the adaptation to Apocalypse Now, but it's like the same kind of structure. This is the third attempt to make a movie that obviously, and they highlight this at the very beginning of the documentary. This is like Apocalypse Now was the third attempt to make a Heart of Darkness adaptation, right? Because Orson Welles, the GOAT, was going to make an adaptation of Hearts of Darkness,
which I love in the documentary, where it's like he didn't get to do it, so he went on to make Citizen Kane instead. It's like this was gonna be his first movie, but he couldn't get to do it, so he had to make Citizen Kane instead.
Yeah, and they say in the documentary how the studios didn't greenlight it because they were worried that it was going to go over budget because it required such elaborate sets. And then the next iteration that almost happened, also maybe kind of a legendary director, George Lucas, was attached to direct an adaptation.
I wouldn't say kind of. I think it's pretty definitive.
With the John Milius like writing it, who also is like big. Like John Milius has made some really great stuff.
And John Milius, he came up with the idea of like, what if we make this about Vietnam instead of wherever fucking Heart of Darkness takes place. I haven't read the novella.
I forget. They said it in the doc, but
and George, it's funny in like the documentary where George Lucas is talking about it, because he sounds so kind of not interested.
He's like, he's gonna make me go out and shoot it. I don't want to do that.
And then John Milius sounds so fucking. John Milius sounds kind of like an asshole a little bit in this. I saw I listened to a podcast kind of prepping for this where they were talking about John Milius, and they said that The Big Lebowski, the dude from The Big Lebowski is apparently based on John Milius in like real life.
John Milius is sick.
That's so interesting.
I watched Big Wednesday from John Milius earlier this week.
Yeah, he wrote
really
that. Who directed Big Wednesday?
He did.
Oh, he did? Oh,
yeah,
shit.
it's one of his like he's not directed too many things, but you got that, Conan the Barbarian, and
so John Milius made. He didn't make the movie, but he wrote the screenplay for what would become Apocalypse Now. And something kind of interesting is that John Milius, George Lucas, Francis Ford Coppola, all these guys were in school during the Vietnam War, so they didn't get drafted because they were in university. So none of them actually have any firsthand experience of what life was like in Vietnam. But they, but for some reason they kind of like, I feel like maybe making this movie was kind of their way of like making up for whatever feelings they had about that, because
that's an interesting perspective.
Because John Milius, like especially in the documentary, he just comes off so douchey because he comes off like
I did not have.
Yeah, no, I didn't really get that vibe. I was
really?
Like, I like that guy in his movies.
I don't know.
Yeah.
He said something kind of weird in the documentary where he's talking about how like, like I'm making this is kind of like the Odyssey, and like the Playboy bunnies are like the sirens, and I'm like, why wouldn't you call them the sirens? Like,
okay,
like,
that's a good point. Yeah. I don't know. I guess I didn't think that much into him because I wasn't really connecting those dots. It's more just like a talking head thing for me, but.
But yeah, so like they don't have any firsthand experience of the Vietnam War.
Yeah.
Specifically, and that has kind of drawn some criticism for Apocalypse Now, where some like native Vietnamese people have
Mhm.
said like, because obviously they didn't film this in Vietnam, they filmed this in the
Yeah, in the
Philippines.
Philippines. Yeah.
And some like native Vietnamese people have criticized the movie, saying like, this isn't what Vietnam looks like. There's not this much like
Yeah.
empty lands. Like it's way more
Yeah.
crowded here and all this stuff. And
Yeah.
also there's some criticism about like there's a section, and this actually happens in Hearts of Darkness, but there's a section in Apocalypse Now where they're throwing like the sticks, like the arrows,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. Yeah.
at them, and apparently there's like a lot of like that has drawn some criticism too, where it's like like the like Vietnamese people are like Kong, like they would not like they didn't fucking use sticks and arrows, like they had
Yeah.
guns, like
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
so I don't know, but we all like the movie.
Yes. That part's true.
And
Yeah, bucket.
Yeah, it's like here's how this movie is controversial. But anyway, we like.
yeah, well, there's actually so much more about how it's controversial. Even watching the documentary, I was like, this is crazy. When they're
Yeah.
like, Francis Ford Coppola just like was funding a fucking like what's it called, like um what's the fucking word, the government, what's
The government.
no, like the Philippines government,
Oh, you mean like how they were using like
no, they were paying the Philippines. He was paying the Philippines government like hundreds of thousands of dollars a day,
yeah,
to use the
the
helicopters.
helicopters.
So
Okay,
he was
yeah,
like
yeah,
directly funding like this kind of
yeah.
like war to go for like the government to go and kill like communist
Yeah,
revolutionaries.
yeah,
You know,
yeah. No, that part is for now. That's kind of I kind
that's
of didn't even
crazy.
like really think about how fucked up that
Yeah,
was
like
when I
no, he
was
was like
watching it.
directly like helping like funding them to go kill communist revolutionaries. Like,
Yeah, no, that's
um,
insane.
yeah, it's crazy.
Like out of his pocket too. Like,
But
yeah.
the movie
Okay.
opens up with Martin Sheen,
Yeah.
kind of the goat. I was not familiar with Martin Sheen's fucking game, dude. Like, but yeah,
Yeah,
it
no, he's
opens up
really good in this.
with like kind of like this like impressive sound design of like the helicopters, with the fan, and like him kind of like having a PTSD like little moment. What do you guys think about that?
The opening?
Yeah, the opening.
It's rad. It rocks. I mean, that opening's really great. Yeah, I don't know. I think that opening's cool. It's
Okay,
Yeah.
a good opening. Eh?
Is my
Cool.
vacuum incredibly loud?
No, I can't. I
Yeah.
can't hear it.
You can't hear
Wait,
it?
what?
I can't hear it now.
Oh, okay.
Hear what?
There is like extremely loud vacuuming going on right next to me.
Oh, come on.
Anyway, yeah, no, I think the opening's sick because I think I like specifically the stuff with Martin Sheen's character, like when you kind of like see how he's already like been made crazy a little bit. I feel like I've seen a lot of like people kind of bring up how he becomes crazy like over the course of this journey, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where it's like no, like you kind of see how like this war has affected him before he even has to do this.
Yeah. Well,
Like
yeah, because it opens up with him having PTSD and like not
yeah,
being okay.
exactly.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
and then like he gets called in, and he's like, they like the soldiers like are like, we got a dead one, and like kind of
Yeah.
put him in the shower, and it's from the very first scene we see, it's like, man, this shit is fucked up. Like this
Yeah,
is
exactly.
like fucked up. Like
Yeah. Because I
and
feel
then-
like some people have that perspective of like this is a journey of like someone like just very like untouched, like going like descending, and it's like no, he's descending from like a pretty low point already, like
yeah,
like a very low point even clearly.
and when he gets called in to the office with like Harrison Ford.
I love how
Um,
Harrison Ford's in the movie for
yeah.
like 2 minutes.
Yeah, great cameo by Harrison
just-
Ford.
yeah.
How like deep into Harrison Ford's career does this movie happen? Like was he
It's
like
very
he was Han
early.
Solo. already.
He was
It's
Han
like he
Solo
was Han
already.
Solo
Yeah.
for
Okay. Good
like
point.
a
Because that comes out.
year.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
That's
So it's
true.
like
So this is like right after Star Wars, basically.
Yeah. Okay. So people knew who he was.
Yeah, this is like before
yeah.
Star Wars. I mean, after Star Wars, before Indiana Jones, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. That checks out.
Yeah.
I didn't know he was in the movie either until I started watching it.
Yeah,
Like I
fucking-
didn't know he was there until he popped up, and I was like, "Is that Harrison Ford?"
Yeah, handsome Harrison Ford cameo. But they bring him in, and then they start like questioning Martin Sheen and being like, "Did you or did you not do this?" And Martin Sheen, and they're asking them if he did it a political assassination, and Martin Sheen basically has to be like, "Well, I did not do this, but if I did do this, I couldn't tell you." And they're like, "All right," because it's like it's pretty clear that they know all they know, right? And they're just like basically seeing if they'll tell him. Because they're about to ask him to do another fucking political assassination.
It's like the same thing again.
They just needed confirmation.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting how, because throughout the whole movie, we see Martin Sheen kind of like stare fucking death in the face and like see like the death of innocent like kind of like people like over and over and over again. But like, and he's kind of like not like unfazed by it, but he's just kind of like like hollow. Like he can't have a reaction. He can't feel anything. But then he has like this mental torment throughout the whole movie about like I have to kill an American. I have to kill a soldier.
Exactly.
And it's like that's so fucked up. He's so fucked up.
And there is like not even just with his character. There's like some clear like contradictions that happen in the movie that like are just such a clear like testament to how fucked up this war is. And that's why I loved like if we're talking about earlier stuff, like when they go to what's his name, who's like the first guy that he reports to, the surfer guy.
Oh yeah. It's his name's Robert Duvall's character. I forgot the character's name though, but it's Robert Duvall.
Yeah, Kilgore.
Kilgore. Yes.
When he goes to like that whole Kilgore part is like so fucking cool to me, because it's just like the best proof of how like disconnected these people are. Where he's just like in the middle of like there's still like gunshots being fired,
the way he's
walking, and like things exploding, and he's like, "Get the surfboard!" It's like we have to go surfing, and it's just like there's not a better way to like show that like contrast between how like little we cared about their lives and how like much we just want to like. It's like
all the like surfing stuff is really funny.
Yeah, it's like let's
when
just kill these
they're on
people
the helicopter and he's telling them to look.
Yeah,
he's talking about the waves.
Like that. I mean, that might be like my favorite part of the movie, just like it contextually, like to like what they're talking about through that, because I just thought that was so interesting. Like I was like, this is so evil, dude.
Yeah. Well, and it's like the whole like lead up to that where when they first like goes to the camp to find Kilgore, and we get like the Francis Ford Coppola like cameo, which is fucking awesome because like,
that part was so cool.
There's a television crews there like recording like the war, you know, and Francis Ford Coppola is like, "Go, keep going, go."
Don't look at the camera.
Don't look at the camera. Yeah. That's really sick. But then and he meets Kilgore, and Kilgore immediately is like, it's interesting because it's like he's like a little bit of a dynamic character because he obviously he cares a little bit about his troops, like the people that he is responsible over. He's like, you know, and he's just trying to, it's like what the Martin Sheen narration says, where he's like he's trying to bring home to Vietnam, like he's trying to bring home here for these guys to make it like a little bit more bearable, but it just like it actually just kind of makes things worse. But then Martin Sheen is trying to be like, hey, so I need to I had this fucking mission, right? We can drop our boat in here, like if we go here, like near this village. And they were like, oh, we can go surfing there. And he's like, no, we can make that happen. So they just fucking like nuke, not literally nuke, but like they fucking nuke this fucking village and kill everybody in there.
Like, Not to mention, he literally like isn't even interested in talking to Martin Sheen until he finds out that Martin Sheen's like crew includes a guy who's like a surfer back home. He's like, dude, he's like, I know you.
Yeah, like that's so crazy. Yeah, because they like heard rumors that there was a professional surfer in Vietnam, and then like they were like, it's so fucked up.
And it's this like massive scene too when they fucking like trample that village and just like
it's like well, because that's where the March of the Valkyries, or right?
Which is
the song, which I want to say like maybe the single most genius use of music in any movie
No,
ever.
yeah,
It's like
literally.
maybe I'm using a little bit of hyperbole, but it's like it's up there because like that's like a Nazi song. That's like a
Yeah.
fucking World War II Nazi song that they
Yeah.
kind of like appropriated to be like the America and like this awesome fucking action set piece. It's like it's so genius and like
I love
like
that part. Yeah. That I mean that's what I'm saying. Like that whole little like section of the movie, I was like, this is the coolest shit I've ever watched. Like, it's
and
like,
apparently because they needed like a very specific version of the song. They spent like
Mhm.
they like went through like 30 different and like the edit they went through like 30 different versions of the song trying to
Oh
find like
wow.
the perfect kind of like recording of that that composition specifically.
Yeah.
um so thought out. And in the documentary when they're like talking about
Yeah, they
like
bring it up in the
recording,
documentary. Yeah.
we're like shooting that scene and how like hard like the director of photography, it was always like, it's like they're coming in too high, and then
Yeah.
they just like leave, they just take all of the fucking helicopters to go fight this war to go kill
Yeah,
communists
yeah, yeah,
in the middle of recording a take.
No, literally, they were just like, yeah,
yeah.
it's like we gotta go do something else real
Yeah.
quick.
It's crazy.
Yeah, no, it's insane. Damn,
um
dude.
but yeah, it is like it is so fucked up, that Kilgore guy, because it is like, yeah, he cares a little bit about like his men, but then it's also like he's a psychopath. Like he doesn't care about
Yeah.
he's like dehumanized the Vietnamese people to such a point where he's like, yeah, it's like land to the slaughter. Like like we do
Yeah,
what we got to do.
exactly.
Like who gives a
Yeah.
shit? But then
And
when the woman comes up with the grenade and drops it, and
yeah,
there all the soldiers are immediately like, you fucking monster, you psychopath, like
Yeah,
you fucking
yeah.
like immediately turns on her and acts like she's
yeah,
like a fucking animal. It's like, yo,
yeah, it's insane.
people are saying this movie's pro-war.
It's like, come on, dude. Not just that, but I mean, of course, we have to bring up that he has, the most iconic line in the movie. But I think it's also just like the part that follows after that line is like the part that should be not like that's the part that should be famous, but it's like when he follows up the like the I love the smell of napalm in the morning thing by like talking about how it's like victory. I'm like, this is like the fucking like disconnect to the max, dude. Like he's just like it's like a fucking game to him, dude.
And also, what great delivery. Robert Duvall's
Yeah.
the fucking
Oh, of
goat.
course,
Amazing
yeah.
delivery on that line.
It's
Yeah.
Robert Duvall. I mean,
Yeah, no, he
And
kills it.
apparently, I don't know if they brought this up in the documentary or if I read this somewhere, but John Milnes, he did not like that line. He tried to write it out of the script.
Oh, really? I don't think
Yeah.
I don't think that was in the documentary.
no.
He tried to write that line out of the script because he thought it was fucking corny.
Damn.
But obviously it
That's
made its way.
crazy.
Yeah.
And then it just ends up being like arguably the most memorable line in like any movie ever.
Yeah, like it's so, man,
Yeah,
it's
that's
great. Yeah,
insane.
that whole sequence is so insane.
Yeah, like
Um,
that's what I was gonna say. Is like that line is so famous, but when I see it in the context of the movie, like that whole speech is like is so like powerful with like regards to how fucking evil his character is.
And it's like long as fuck. It's like this long ass take while like
Yeah.
bombs are going off.
Yeah, there's like all this
left
shit in the background.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
like and the fact that like there was actually like an explosion happens like right next to Robert Duvall, and he's just like fucking cool and composed.
yeah. Oh, he's
Amazing
so good,
performance.
dude.
Like-
He's so fucking good, man. It's like all these little like I mean, obviously we're gonna get to other performances too, but it's like it's so interesting how it's like because since it's a journey, like even huge actors like Robert Duvall are only part of like this one section of the movie, and all these people just like make each of those sections so like unique with their performances. Like they just like show up for part of the movie and they're like, let me just do the best acting ever.
Yeah, we'll talk about it a little bit later because like we're still kind of at the beginning of the movie, but
Yeah.
this is this is especially after watching the documentary, this is very very obviously like Francis Ford Coppola flexing all of his fucking clout, like everything he can to do whatever he can.
Oh,
to
like
make
you
this
mean
movie.
the part in the documentary where he was like, if I don't get this guy,
Yeah,
I'm
we'll,
gonna get
yeah,
this
yeah,
guy."
we'll talk about that. We'll talk about that when we get to that. But yes. Yeah, that's the craziest
insane,
part of the whole
dude.
documentary. But yeah,
Yeah,
to me,
Yeah, that
but
part
yeah.
was crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that we have the whole that Robert Duvall's yeah, and so we watched the theatrical cut, and I just want to point out in the extended version, there's like a longer kind of cut, like the scene goes on for longer, and they actually do go surfing, and then like they end up like there's a section where like they like steal their surfboards and all this stuff. It goes on for like another like 5-10 minutes than what's in the theatrical cut. Um,
Interesting.
yeah, and apparently in real life they did leave behind the surfboards, and they kind of
Oh,
like Francis
shit.
Ford Coppola accidentally kind of like started like created like a surfing culture in the Philippines because like these
What
young
has this guy not done?
because
Nah,
this
he's the
young like
goat. He's
these
the
young like
goat.
Philippine like left behind a bunch of surfboards, and these young Philippine kids just like used them and taught themselves how to surf. So
So
like,
insane.
Yeah, he's the goat.
He's just like the most interesting dude in the world. Like I said this when I watched the documentary and reviewed it. I was like, I could just listen to this guy talk for hours, dude.
because he's like a
Like,
megalomaniac.
yeah,
He's
no.
like James Cameron if James Cameron like burned more money. If James Cameron was like, I'm gonna fucking sell my
He's
house to
evil
like do
James
whatever the fuck I
Cameron.
can. He's like,
Yeah. Oh
he's like
man.
literally a megalomaniac. Okay, what happens? What's the scene? Okay, what happens after the? Because like we go to night, and then we're on basically the journey with them on the boat for the rest of the movie, where it becomes
Yeah.
like a
Yeah.
guy in a boat movie.
Yeah. And we should probably talk about, like the other people that are with him as
Yeah.
well.
So what's the crew on the boat? It's obviously Martin Shane's Willard, who's the protagonist and our narrator.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Albert Hall, right, plays the chief who's steering the boat.
mhm.
Obviously my favorite part is Lawrence Fishburne being in it, dude.
Lawrence
Oh, he's
Fishburne,
he's so
age
cool. Like
14.
yeah,
What?
like outstanding.
Crazy.
Oh my god, I love Lawrence Fishburne, dude. It was like, and it's even when you compare his parts and then like you kind of see him like his one little clip in the documentary of like the clip from when they were filming still, because obviously there's a clip in the documentary of him grown up when they're recording
Yeah.
it, but like when they're filming still, like, and his like perspective on the Vietnam War is so like a child talking about the Vietnam War.
Yeah,
Crazy.
he
And
was
then,
literally like, yeah,
you
it's
know,
cool. I think it's cool that you get to go over there and like do
Yeah.
whatever you want. And it's like,
exactly, dude. I was like, no, but it's so cool to include both those things in the documentary, because then like you see the version of him like grown up later, and like the way that he's talking and the perspective that he has on it is just entirely different. I just thought that was so fucking cool, because obviously like he plays, I don't know, like in his other roles, like he plays like a lot of like just a lot of like characters that are very like wise and just know a whole lot. Like I'm thinking of like his Boys in the Hood character, for example, and it's just
Mhm.
like to see
Well-
him as like a little kid like in this documentary.
yeah, and obviously
and
like
talking that way.
Morpheus,
Yeah,
right?
no,
Who
of
was like
course.
kind of like
Yeah,
God in that movie, where he's like
Yeah, yeah,
all
yeah.
knowing.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. That was
But
just crazy
it's
to me.
crazy how this film has so many kind of actors at their kind of height of their kind of career, or even just like at the end of it, just being like very notable. And then you have 14-year-old Lawrence Fishburne, who's going to go on to do so many great things, who is still like keeping up with them at this like crazy young age.
Yeah.
He's really great in his like limited role.
Yeah. But yeah, we could talk about specific things, I guess, about the journey, like
So,
from
yeah.
when they leave to when he arrives.
I want to
Because
say
there's
like
like a number of scenes there that I thought were super powerful.
the first, if we're gonna go in order, the first one would be, is it when they get off the boat and see the tiger?
Oh, the tiger
That's-
scene
that
is,
was
I'm not
great.
gonna lie, yo, that might have been like the best jump scare I've ever seen in a movie, dude. That shit fucked me up.
That was,
bro.
yeah, it
I
was
was
scary.
not ready for that at all, dude. Like we don't, because it's like it's interesting that this is like, kind of like obviously when we get to the ending we'll talk about how this is like a horror movie, but it is, like in a way like the
Yeah, I
horrors
mean,
of
the
war,
horrors of war,
obviously. Yeah, so it's like, but that part was just like straight up like a horror movie, dude. I was like not expecting that to happen at all, and it actually scared the shit out of me. And then in the documentary, of course, they talk about how it's like they had like the tiger, and they were like, oh yeah, don't worry, we just like didn't feed him for a week. So,
That's
like,
crazy. The whole tiger training stuff with the guy in the documentary is so funny.
yeah,
where
dude,
he's
I was like,
he's like doing his like accent. It's great.
oh man, yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's like Like when they said they didn't feed him for a week, I was like, you could take me out of that scene, dude. I'm like, I'm good.
Yeah.
Do not want to be acting in that.
Yeah, it's like so. Yeah, it's insane. It's like so crazy. It's like, can they even do that anymore? Like, can you
No.
just get a
Yeah,
tiger guy and like put your
You
tiger in your
can't.
fucking
You
movie
just
in the
can't do that
Philippines?
anymore.
Like,
yeah. Um,
um,
also, like while we're talking, I guess about like even starting with the tiger and like the whole way there, just like the way that this movie looks when they're like in the river, you know what I
Oh.
mean? Like going from place to place is just like, I mean, it's perfect. Like it's amazing.
Yeah.
yeah, it's. I think this is one of those things where it's like, I was thinking about this. If you were to have like an all-time Oscars or like an all-time kind of like awards where it's like every movie in history, and you had to like hand out awards, I think that like this would get the production design award out of like every movie in history. This might have like the best production design. You know, like
Yeah. Because it's like a colossal movie. Like
Yeah.
there's like a number of scenes that are like unbelievable to look at. But yeah,
it's
I don't
so
know.
insane. Yeah.
Just the way they like captured the river with like the fucking smoke and like the like just the way they use all the color. I'm like, this is so fucking cool, dude. Like
Well,
this is
and now that we're on the boat too, I wanted to. They kind of touch on this in the documentary a little bit, where they say how like, oh, like the like the public didn't know like what people were doing over there in Vietnam with like all the drugs and stuff.
yeah.
But like, like chef on the boat is smoking pot like the whole time, you know,
Yeah.
and it's like and who's the kid? I forgot the surfer kid's name, but he brought like acid on the boat, which becomes
Oh
very
yeah.
sad by the end of the movie because he fucking fries his brain. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
but it's insane. Um,
But they, I mean, do they? Which one happens first? When the Playboy people show up, or like when they pull over that boat? I don't remember which one happens first.
oh, the Playboy stuff happens first.
Yeah.
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 Okay.
Which,
Um,
talking about production, that whole scene
Yeah, like
is
that's a fucking
insane.
massive scene. Yeah.
massive. They
It
must have
just
had
kind
to
of
like
comes out of nowhere. It's like, oh, we just have this big, like,
they had
giant
to
thing
have
going.
built all that too, right? That's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And apparently, two of the three girls were actually like Playboy playmates, like in real life, and not
Oh,
just
shit.
actresses.
Yeah.
Uh,
And I mean,
Or-
even before that, I love the moment where where he's like at the outpost, like telling the guy what he needs, and then like the guy pretty much is just like, you have to wait, and then he just like grabs him and like throws him on the table, and then the guy
Oh,
comes
yeah,
back to him, and
yeah.
he's like, yeah, my bad.
Yeah,
He's like,
that's so funny.
whatever you need, like it's
Yeah.
yours. I was like, dude, this is like, yeah. I fucking love that
So
part,
good.
man. I just like I
Oh,
think
Martin Sheen.
yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Like Martin Sheen's like journey throughout the movie, like those little like moments that kind of like hint at the fact that he, is not this like there's plenty of like cracks already where it's like
Yeah.
there's a lot wrong with him.
well, it's and the whole movie is kind of setting up for this kind of like incredible ending, right?
Yeah.
Where we have Martin Sheen on the boat, and so much of the boat is actually just him reading like the classified documents about Kurtz, and
Yeah.
like the whole time he's just second guessing himself, being like, why did this guy go crazy? Like, what did like? Because he's like, oh, this guy's perfect. It's like, oh, this guy like,
Yeah.
he like graduated like he got like graduated with grades from the academy, like came in as an officer, got his master's degree at fucking Harvard, and it's like he's like straight as an arrow. And then like he kind of like digs more deep in as he goes down, but the whole time he's like, I don't want to kill this guy. Basically, it's kind of like what he's getting. He's like, why do they want me to kill this guy?
Yeah, and I think it's also like while we're still at the Playboy scene, it's like I think the other thing that kind of like shows a big part of his character is as it's happening, he's like the only guy that's like watching casually. You know what I mean? It's like all these people like freaking out and like catcalling them
Losing
and
their
stuff, like just
mind.
yeah, like going crazy, and he's just like sitting there like so composed because he's just like obviously I imagine like like his mind is totally occupied by
He's got
the
bigger,
journey that he's
Well,
on
bigger fish to fry.
He's like-
what he's heading towards.
I think the movie is trying to, and maybe you can feel feel free to disagree, but I think that the movie is kind of communicating that Martin Sheen's Willard is already this husk of a human being. You know,
Yeah.
it's like he's like an empty shell. Whereas everybody else we're still like relatively early on in this fucking experience here,
Yeah.
and everybody else, like all these men who haven't like really seen like the worst that is like the worst of the worst yet.
Yeah.
They have a little bit of humanity left, but in the sense that they're not like an empty shell. They're like, but they're like animals, you know.
Yeah.
They're like kind of losing their minds in the sense where it's like their animal kind of like instincts are taking over and they're becoming like more animalistic.
Yeah.
Um,
Which is like, I mean, kind of a perfect transition to that other scene I was talking about where they pull over the boat, because it's like
yeah,
I think that's like a real interesting thing to look at, where it's like, I mean, one, obviously Lawrence Fishburne's character just starts shooting at these
He's
people like just out
crazy.
of nowhere, which,
so
like that's
that
kind of going along with what you're saying.
that's that. So that boat checking scene is one of the most upsetting moments I can remember in a movie. I remember watching this
Yeah.
movie, like the theatrical cut, sitting through it and getting to that part, and I was just like, I wanted to fucking cry, dude. I was so
Yeah.
upset by that. It was so fucked up. It was so fucked
No,
up.
that part messes me up. Obviously, of course, like the part that follows immediately after what I'm describing, where Martin Sheen's character just kills this innocent woman because he has to keep it. But pretty much they say to him, they're like, "We have to, bring
Yeah,
her back.
shoots
Like,
her.
we need to do this first." And he just fucking shoots her, and he's like, "No, we're gonna keep going because you got to get me somewhere."
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
so the whole thing, it's like it's like the I forgot the character's name, but like the guy that's steering the boat, he sees this very small kind of like boat carrying food, like we're assuming like food and like supplies for like another Vietnamese village.
yeah,
And they're like, no, we got to do a check because he's fucking losing it, right? He's like,
yeah,
no, we got to check the boat. We got to check the boat. And Martin Sheen's like, no, dude, we're not checking the boat. Like it's fine. I have to go fucking to this place to kill this guy.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah,
um,
yeah,
and but he insists on pulling over, and then Chef is like going in there, and Chef's like, "There's nothing fucking in the boat, okay?" And like he keeps going like, "No, check over there. Look at that!" Like losing his mind. It's
yeah,
like, what the fuck? And Chef's just like, wah! And then the woman lunges at him because she's hiding a fucking dog, and then Martin
yeah,
Sheen just like
exactly.
mows them all down.
Yeah. Um,
Upsetting, fucking
No,
upsetting.
it's
Like,
really fucking sad. Yeah. Not to mention it's like it kind of, I mean, me and Doug kind of had like a little conversation about this already, but I brought up, and I've already said it kind of when we were talking about him earlier, but it's like I think there's certain people who have this perspective on the movie that he is kind of like this innocent person, which the opening of the movie clearly shows he isn't. And I think that this is kind of like the scene that like is like the very obvious one to me, where it's like pointing at like, hey, this guy is not a good dude.
Oh yeah.
yeah,
Like,
he's
and
not
it's
the
like
good
he's
guy.
and it's like being on this journey, like being in the fucking war, like, and like killing innocent Vietnamese people, like you are complicit. Like any of these soldiers really obviously are like complicit in what's happening. And I think that that's like very like clear part of the movie that people need to understand.
Yeah.
It's like when people are like, this is, like nobody, I mean, anybody who thinks this is a pro-war movie, it has completely the wrong interpretation of the movie. But it's like, these are the things that like point at it. It's like like that scene is just like the most fucked up
It's
thing.
it's like just straight up like gut wrenching.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah. That
um
was like, I almost had to pause the movie after watching that part. It's
um
just messed up.
and then we see a dog, and I appreciate how we handle the little puppy.
Yeah.
um
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, if
because
somebody shot the dog, dude, I was like,
no,
it's
thankfully
like,
the dog
hey,
dies off screen and we don't
yeah,
see it, but
yeah,
that would have been so fucked up. That would have been
yeah,
so bad.
yeah. I
But it's
mean,
just because it's literally
The
like
the dog
not that it's
a
more
dog
fucked, not
gets
that it's more
shot
fucked
cut.
up than a human dying, but
yeah,
obviously a human dying is worse. But it's just like,
it's like a
if
baby
they,
golden retriever, like
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, um, yeah, no, that
um
whole part's fucked up.
and then yeah, so and of course yeah, Willard shoots the lady who's like still alive after they fucking mow everyone down and they find the dog.
Yeah,
um because they're like, oh, we got to take her to a hospital, and Willard basically shoots her, and it's like, I told you not to stop, like I told you not to do this.
yeah. And then pretty much like after that scene is when we kind of start to lose members of the crew,
Yeah,
sort of like on that's when like the descent to, I guess like the descent to hell for being metaphorical, like kind of like really shifts gears, I guess, because like people start
Well, yeah, because we get up
falling
to the
out of the rail.
bridge, which is kind of like the most, not the most surreal, because it gets way. This is when it starts getting surreal. Actually,
Yeah, yeah.
it's not like the height, but this is when things start getting surreal because we get to the bridge, which is also upsetting, and it's like
Yeah.
basically it's like an active fucking war zone. And
Yeah.
Willard like is getting, and well, they get mail, which is crazy how they get mail, but they get mail.
They get nailed. The
Hey,
the
this
guy's
is
like, I've been waiting
good.
here for 3 days.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
He's like, I want to go home.
yeah, like, he's
He literally like thanks them. He's like, thank you for getting here because I gotta go home
yeah,
now.
they're like in a fucking active. It's like they show up on the set of fucking 1917. It's like an active
No,
fucking war zone.
yeah,
And then Willard makes the fucking crazy decision to like get off the boat and go look for the
yeah,
officer in command.
yeah,
Just to find out that there isn't one. He just finds
yeah.
like
Which like
fucking
that scene
soldiers
when he
going
comes
crazy.
back and they ask him, like they're like, oh, did you find him? And he's like, there's nobody. He's like, there's nobody here. Like that part's gnarly. Dude.
I don't. I heard the second hand, so I don't know if this is true, but I think that like to shoot that they like built that bridge and blew it up like 3 times. Um,
It's fucking crazy.
yeah, like
That is effort for sure.
yeah, and it's so crazy, and it's so like harrowing when like he like goes up to find the guy like shooting like the big gun right at like whoever on like the field from
Yeah, yeah.
and the guy goes and wakes up the other guy in front of Willard and is like, hey, we need you to like shoot this guy basically with a fucking grenade launcher or whatever, and it just
Yeah,
like there's like no life behind those eyes, dude. It's I don't know.
Yeah.
yeah. Um, do we want to touch on anything else before we get to to his arrival?
Well, so basically after that point, he goes back on the boat and he's like, yeah, there's like it's hopeless here. And the surfer dude has dropped acid before this, so now he's seen like casualties of war while tripping balls, which has
Yeah,
probably destroyed his brain. Um, and Willard is talking to the captain and he's like, this is, and it's like right here, right? This is when he tells him that like we are exiting Vietnam,
yeah.
right? We have to like exit the country.
Once they pass the bridge, they're yeah,
Um, and after this point we have the part where they're basically like shooting arrows at everybody,
yeah,
which in the documentary, at this point in the documentary, they shot this stuff after Martin Sheen had a fucking heart attack.
yes. Oh yeah, that's probably worth mentioning.
Yeah, Martin
Um,
Sheen had a heart attack on set.
which is an insane twist in the documentary too, because I was not aware that that's something that happened.
And also like the way that Francis Ford Coppola, I'm so happy we got all these fucking like recorded bits of him talking, because it's like, because the way that Francis Ford Coppola reacts to him having a heart attack is like, bro, can you be a normal human being and not like an egomaniac for half a second? Because he's
Yeah.
like, oh, Martin Sheen is in the hospital, and he's like, yeah, but Martin Sheen's like young and is like in good health. Martin Sheen's 36 and is an alcoholic. But but he's like, Martin Sheen's young and is in good health, right? Like, and he's like talking to the doctor and he's like, no, like he cannot go back home. Like it's like, can like, okay, like after like, what if like we just do kind of like him sitting down, kind of close-ups work of him just acting? Can we just do that? Like just not even acknowledging the fact that he like almost fucking died,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And the doctor's
Yeah.
like, and he basically says how the doctor tells him like, well, we don't know, maybe. And Francis Ford Coppola's like, that's all I need to hear. That's all. Basically being like, it's a win. A win's a win.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
bro, you're crazy. You're a crazy person. Like,
Yeah,
what the
and
fuck?
Martin Sheen's segments of the documentary, like his interviews, are so interesting. Like I think listening to him was maybe, I mean, other than listening to Francis Ford Coppola, probably the most interesting person to like hear from. Not that it's surprising. I mean, he's the main character in the movie,
Yeah.
um, but yeah, I just thought that like everything he was. I mean, obviously him having a fucking heart attack. He says something in the documentary about how like something about how about him dying. Like there's like you know what I mean. There's like a line in there where he says something about like like how he could have died or something.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Well, I actually don't know what you're talking about specifically.
I don't know. I don't know the exact quote, obviously. but there's just like a moment there, and I'm just like, that's insane. Then he's just like, the potential that like this man could have just died, and they're like, all right, well, we got to keep filming.
Yeah. And so yeah, they shoot this part with a stunt double for like the wide stuff, and then obviously they reshoot it when Martin Sheen comes back for the close up stuff. But this is the segment, maybe like I want to say like, oh, the most whatever, but it's like, no, this movie's a fucking masterpiece. There's just so many amazing fucking like all time moments in here. This is a segment or both Francis, what's his name?
Whose name?
Lawrence Fishburne.
Okay.
Yeah, Lawrence Fishburne gets this fucking cassette tape from his mom.
Right. Oh my god, that part is sad, dude.
It's so sad.
I completely, man. This movie has so much in it. I almost thought we were gonna forget that part. Now that you bring it up, dude. Oh man.
Yeah, Lawrence Fishburne gets this cassette tape from his mom in the mail, and I forgot exactly what she says, but it's pretty much like, hey, we're thinking about you, like
and it's like we can't wait to see you come home and stuff like that.
And then he fucking dies while it's still playing.
Yeah,
he dies.
God, dude.
He gets killed by Vietnamese people, like trying to shoot into the onto the boat while they're passing through. Or I don't want to say Vietnamese because they might not be Vietnamese people actually at this point.
Yeah, because
they might be.
Them.
Yeah, they crossed. But and then in the same kind of segment, and at this point, like Willard is like, hey, like don't shoot. They're just trying to like scare us, And like right after he says that, a fucking spear hits through the ship captain's fucking heart, and the ship captain, who is like kind of already fucking going crazy, is like tries to kill Willard.
Oh, right.
Yeah, he tries to kill, like, he's like laying on his back, spear through his fucking chest, right? Willard is there being like, oh my god, and he like grabs on the Martin Sheen's back of the head and tries to like pull its face down onto the fucking spear with his last strength. Harrowing shit.
No, it's fucked up, dude. And then of course, after that is when we get to
actually talk about the movie, because this is where like most like,
that's crazy.
No, this is like where I have the most to say. I feel like it's where Owen has the most to say too, probably.
I mean, obviously there's a lot,
but it's kind of crazy to say that when so much has already happened and like so many like fucking like amazing like set pieces and like iconic moments. Like the movie could have just stopped like there, like they could have just all died there and it would have been perfect. But like there's just like this like extra like perfect like crazy like it like tops it in the like end, which is insane.
And it starts
all we've gotten is already like perfect, and then you just get this like it one-ups itself with this absurdity.
With like this like genuine piece of like real kind of like surrealist like experimental piece of cinema. Not really experimental, but like like interesting shit. Two all-time performances. Anyway, we're talking about films. Willard gets to
his destination,
which is the camp of which Kurtz, played by Marlon Brando, is hiding out at. And it is the craziest fucking thing ever.
Yeah. I mean, as soon as he gets there, dude, that's what I like, that like little sequence when he gets there and everybody who's in the water like splits so that the boat could go through. I'm like, dude, geez, like that part was so fucking cool.
Oh my god, I forgot about that.
So cool. Oh my god, that might be like my favorite little like minute of the movie. I mean, it's like amazing, dude. It's so good.
It's like I got like fucking chills on my spine when we first see like they're like painted white in the boats and they like have to part through. I'm like, what the fuck is going on? And this is actually, I think, like the most impressive set design of the whole thing, just because there's all of the dead bodies. I have a kind of piece of trivia here, which is crazy. Apparently
the trivia is like they're real dead
bodies. Well, so apparently,
don't even
apparently, that's crazy you said that. So apparently the production designer was like,
there's no way those are real people.
The production designer was like, how do I get real dead bodies? Like, because he was really thinking that it's like, fuck, dude, like because he was like, we need so many dead bodies for this set, and he was like, how do I fucking get that? So he like reached out and he found a dead bodies guy. he found a dead bodies guy.
Yeah,
Yeah, he
here's my
found
dead bodies plug.
no, yeah, he found a guy that, and the guy was like, yeah, I can get you bodies, like, like, like whatever for like whatever price, like I can get you dead bodies for your movie, right? And so like the production designer literally found a guy for dead bodies, and then the FBI stepped in, and
Jesus.
and was like, how did you fucking get these? They didn't make it in the movie because the FBI stepped in, but the FBI was like, where the fuck did you get these dead bodies? And like he told him, right, because it's the fucking FBI, and apparently that guy that he got that he like got the connect with was a fucking grave robber, and he was like
Jesus.
robbing graves to like sell and then selling the bodies to people.
What other scenario besides a movie set would he be selling dead bodies for?
No, I don't
Like,
know.
who is buying these?
I don't know, but yeah, apparently the production designer did get a connect for dead bodies. Couldn't end up using it.
But they're
'cause
not
of
in the movie, so no,
yeah,
no dead
they're
bodies.
not in the movie because the FBI
Okay.
stepped in. But like,
Yeah.
isn't that crazy? Like,
No,
how,
that's
like,
insane. That's actually insane. And I'm gonna be so caught up now just thinking about like what this guy's business model was and who he was selling these dead bodies
yeah,
to.
who is,
Like,
yeah.
I'm never gonna stop thinking about this because how is this like an effective like
But
how is
imagine
this
like
an effective business?
imagine
Or is
the
it just a
fact
side hustle?
the fact that the production designer even got to that point where he was like, how do I get real dead bodies on set?
Yeah.
Like, what are you talking about? Like, what the fuck?
Yeah, it's like that's like beyond extreme.
Yeah.
Like that is like
But
that's
we
insane.
So yeah, but we end up at this place. We're met with two things: lots of indigenous people to the land,
Yeah.
and Dennis Hopper.
Yes. Yeah. Who's
Which
fucking
is Dennis
amazing,
Hopper
by the
is
way.
so good in this.
Like that's
movie.
Yeah.
obviously when I said before that people are great in their, specific sequences, I was talking at least in the future about Dennis Hopper and Marlon Brando, of course. Because they're like, I mean, Dennis Hopper's so fucking good, dude. And his part of the documentary when he's talking to Francis Ford Coppola and they're like, they have that little like back and forth, you know what I mean? And he just like seems like a crazy person.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, but no, it's not Dennis Hopper's fault because sorry, I'm
no,
just
I know.
bring this
I
up because you
just-
brought it up, but it's not Dennis Hopper's fault because Francis Ford Coppola would like write lines for so much of this last
Yeah.
section was Francis Ford Coppola writing shit the day of because Marlon Brando fucked
Yeah.
everything up.
Yeah.
But he was like so much of that was like Dennis Hopper, Marlon Brando, fuck. So many names. Francis Ford Coppola would like write lines for a new scene that he just wrote, give them to Dennis Hopper. Dennis Hopper would like not have them memorized.
not have him memorized.
Because
yeah.
like he just got them, and Francis Ford Coppola would just give him so much shit, and he's like, I mean, I got these lines 5 days ago. I don't know, like,
I just thought that part of the documentary was so fucking funny. Dude. Like,
yeah, because he like Francis Ford Coppola's like treating him like a jackass in the documentary, like, you
yeah,
know?
no, literally. But no, Dennis Hopper's fucking amazing in this, dude. Like I mean, it worked out. Like the lines he does end up with are like some of the stuff he's saying. Oh man, he says something to Martin Sheen about like something relating to math or something. I don't know. You know what I mean? He has that one like moment where he says like,
Oh, he's like, oh, fractions, like you can't.
Yeah,
what
yeah,
the fuck are
yeah.
fractions? You can't land on you can't land on a fraction. You're gonna like to
so
Venus on
funny.
like a 1/2 or whatever he says. Like,
it was just such a cool depiction of like this guy's fucking cult. Like this
yeah,
like
it is.
cult
It is a
following that
cult.
this guy
It-
has
and it's
amassed.
like the way that Dennis Hopper, because like we have a lot of Dennis Hopper talking about Kurtz, talking about Marlon
Yeah.
Brando's character before we actually before Willard is brought in to meet him, and it's like
Yeah.
Dennis Hopper, the way he's talking about it, it feels like he's talking about like an abusive partner.
Exactly.
Where
yeah.
he's like, yeah, because like obviously, there's like fucking dead bodies and like decapitated heads and like everywhere, right? And Dennis Hopper is like, yeah, it's like sometimes he goes too far, but he's the first person to tell you that he's gone too far.
Yeah,
He's the first
exactly.
person to tell you that he had gone too
Yeah.
far. It's like,
Which is why including his like character like in and everything that he like says in that section of the movie is so smart because it's like this is the best way to like paint who this man is, like to have somebody like that shows this cult following, because it's like he's literally like like if you've ever watched anything about like cults, like any like documentaries or like anything about cults, it's like this is literally how people talk. Like like word for word. Like he says so many things that I'm like, this is just something you would see in a documentary about a cult.
He's so good.
So yeah, I don't know.
Marlon Brando, the
Yeah.
goat.
Yeah.
I did.
Um,
I wanted to bring in one piece of trivia too
Okay.
about Marlon Brando that they don't even address in Hearts of Darkness but Marlon Brando allegedly is not featured in like as like a talking head interview in the documentary because he refused to be interviewed because he said that Francis Ford Coppola still owed him $2 million for making Apocalypse Now, so he refused to take part in the documentary.
that's crazy.
Funny.
But yeah, he is outstanding in this movie, just like he is in everything. And anybody who thinks this is a bad performance is wrong.
Please fuck
Kind of
yourself.
absurd to think that. I mean,
Literally absurd, especially watching the documentary. You're crazy. You're
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so yeah, I mean, where to even start? So he comes into the set 100 pounds overweight. You know, he's 5'9", 300 pounds, fat fucking dude, right?
Yeah.
And Francis Ford Coppola is immediately like, oh no, you know, he's like, oh, and he immediately tries to write in scenes of him being kind of like a king and like having kind of like whores, like in quotes, like whores, you know, and like like moments of him like eating like really like lavishly being, and Marlon Brando immediately refuses. He's like, no. Like, what the fuck? Marlon Brando's like, no, I'm not going to do that. And Francis Ford Coppola was like, okay, well, so then he has to like work with the director of photographer to like shroud him in darkness.
Yeah.
Genius. Accidental genius.
It's so good.
Which looks amazing.
It's so
yeah.
good.
And we should probably talk about his character specifically as well.
Yeah, so he plays Kurtz, who is fascinating. Like,
yeah, of course.
a crazy cult leader, you know, kind of like driven mad by I don't even know, you know, like,
and we need to emphasize too that it's like a lot of this, of course, is everything surrounding him, you know, like we just talked about Dennis Hopper's character and like how he kind of like builds this guy up. So it's like we have seen like all of this stuff about this character that proves to us how insane this person is. Like there's literally just like fucking, you know, like beheaded, like just like heads like all over the floor outside of his like little, you know, temple or whatever.
That
It's
shit's
like
crazy.
we know how insane this man is. And then of course Marlon Brando actually shows up and we just get a lot of him talking and being really, really good at it.
Well, yeah, because so Dennis Hopper kind of like sets it up for the audience in Willard, where he tells him like, the man, he's a poet, he speaks in poetry and rhymes and riddles, and it's like, what the fuck are you talking about? But, like, he really is. It's like so much of Marlon Brando's performance is him being like, oh, you know, the sun rises in the noon, and then it sets up the sun, and then what is a ladybug without a tree, and like, you know, all this like shit like that.
And then it just like pairs that with like these super like meaningful like ethical questions about like how he's gotten to that point, and like, you know, like war as a whole, and just like, you know, obviously like repeatedly talking about how horrific it all is.
And we talk about how like Francis Ford Coppola rewrote so much of this, rewrote basically this entire section.
Yeah,
like
he talks about not having like an ending at all, and he's just like,
like he literally threw away John Milnes's fucking screenplay ending and like rewrote it while they were fucking filming. And
it's insane for him to like think that it's bad throughout the documentary, you know.
And while they're shooting, we have and like the documentary is so genius
saying that.
Because we see the footage of him like shooting with Marlon Brando, and Marlon Brando's like talking, and Francis Ford Coppola is off in the background being like, talk about this, you know, like talk about bloodlust or whatever, and then Marlon Brando just like and like just goes like, bloodlust. Well, I read that humans are. It's like you know, and then at the end of a take, Marlon Brando is like looking up at like out of the window and being like, I've run out of things to say. Like,
my favorite part in the documentary is when he's just like, it just like shows him like the close up, and he's just like, I swallowed a bug.
It's so funny.
That part is so funny good.
Yeah.
Um,
But Owen, what do you think about this part? Like,
well, I think you mentioned it earlier. There's the part in the documentary where Francis talks about how if he can't get Brando, I don't forget the time period he needs it for 3 weeks or something.
mm-hmm.
And he's like,
Yeah.
he just starts mentioning like Nicholson, he'll get Pacino, and I think
Yeah.
it one you talked about earlier, like he kind of flexes the power that Francis has at the time, and like he can get anyone. But I also think it like Brando's performance is so good that I couldn't see anyone else in that
Yeah, no
role.
shot.
Like it's like he just becomes that character, and I think so much of what he does with his bald head and where he puts his hand on his head and all like his kind of um body language and his voice and what he says, I think it's so Brando, and I couldn't see anyone else do it. But then again, you have this moment where you mentioned like the highest, every highest like paid actor, the top of the top, the cream of the
Yeah.
crop, and how they could have done that role, which would be crazy to have Pacino be that character or something like that.
Al
Yeah.
Pacino
But
would be insane.
it's like
Yeah, it's just
absurd
like no
to
matter
even
who he
think
picks
about
to
that.
replace him, it's an entirely different
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
character.
But yeah,
Um,
no, it's a great. I mean, it makes the movie, which is kind of crazy to say because it's like the rest of the movie. Again, we talked about it earlier, but the rest of the movie is so great. But this is like the what makes Apocalypse Now is the Brando performance.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
one of the I'm not even exaggerating. Like, not only is it a great performance, I think it's one of the most fascinating and like definitive acting performances, like screen acting
Yeah,
performances,
yeah.
just
Yeah.
ever. It's
Which
like
is
it's
crazy to say what Kevin was talking about. How people people like, oh, I like the movie. Like Brando's performance kind of put me off, which is like, it's crazy because
Yeah.
it's
And I
kind
think
of
it goes back. I
I don't
think
know.
I think this is worth mentioning because I talked to Doug about this as well, where it's like I think some people might have a different perspective on what like what a crazy like kind of like off the rails villain is supposed to act like,
Yeah.
whereas like like you don't need that in this movie because I think some people, especially now, like watching this movie fucking 40 years after it came out, right, is like we have become a lot of people have become so desensitized to violence, and specifically when you talk about it like from the perspective of war, where a lot of us, a large portion of people who live in the US don't really like view war as this like as like the violence and like as horrific as it is and like all of these really bad things that we do. So when you see this guy and he doesn't have like this kind of like crazy in your face performance, it probably, I imagine, is hard for them to like find him a good villain, whereas it's like we know he's a good villain because we're looking at it from this perspective where it's like he has fucking people hanging from trees, dude. Like this is like
yeah.
as evil of a person as
Uh,
you can get. And I think not acknowledging that is like where people go wrong with why this isn't a good performance, because it is. It's just like
yeah.
he doesn't need to do any of that they want him to, because this is a like purely evil person. like this
When you
movie is showing
when
like
you when you said
how
yeah,
Yeah.
hanging
horrific this
from
could be.
trees, I thought about the moment where they come back to the boat and the person just falls, like the dead body just kind of
Yeah.
falls and like
Yeah.
flops in the water.
It's
It's
crazy. It's like so like, no remorse kind of.
yeah.
Um and I wanted to say another so much accidental genius in Apocalypse Now. Another moment of accidental genius is apparently, I don't know if this is true or not, but I read that allegedly because obviously he showed up to set and Francis Ford Coppola realized that like, oh, you haven't read the fucking book. Um so and he
Yeah. Yeah.
so apparently what happened was that Marlon Brando read Heart of Darkness in one night, right before they started shooting, like started shooting real takes. And that same night after he read it, because the book's kind of short, he shaved his head without telling anybody.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is insane.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, because you have they what's his name? Martin Sheen has this picture of Brando,
Hmm.
and like he constantly kind of cuts to it, and it just looks like Marlon Brando. And
Yeah.
then you finally get to see him, and he's just like this monster.
Yeah.
He's like, it's just, it's so. I don't know. It's
It doesn't look
interesting to
anything like the
have.
picture.
It's interesting to
Yeah.
have that picture because Brando is so recognizable that you just see Brando, but then you get to it and you don't see the man anymore. It's this kind of whole beast that you see.
Yeah, you see this
You know,
bald, like
which
hollow,
which
like
is interesting to to show Brando often and kind of throughout the movie because of Brando's kind of stature, and I think in ways it could take someone out of it with someone else, but I think kind of Brando kind of has this look that works because it's I don't know, it's an interesting thing that I thought about when they kept cutting to it because Brando is this kind of megastar, and to kind of just be like, oh, we're in Vietnam, and then we're kind of looking at this is the guy we're going to see, and it's just Marlon Brando. But I think there's something about his performance, especially towards the end, that it's the kind of dissolved version of the man.
Yeah.
It's very
Yeah.
fascinating.
And then obviously
Yeah, we have
amazing
to.
ending.
Yeah,
Oh
we
yeah.
have to talk about
Oh
the
yeah.
fact that his character obviously dies at the end.
Juxtaposed from him and like what is it? What are they killing? Because they actually kill an
Oh,
Uh,
it's
animal
a
on
cow,
screen.
I think.
yeah,
Is it a
yeah, yeah.
cow?
Yeah, it's a cow. It
Which
seems to
the
be.
whole bit about the documentary that is really interesting, where they kind of because it doesn't really feel like they originally were going to do that, but someone
No, it
like
was like a
mentions it to
yeah.
Francis, which that whole image bit where they're cutting the cow and he's cutting him is
Yeah.
perfect.
Because
Yeah.
it's like we are the same, you know. It's
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
at that point, it's like we have like lost so much of our humanity that like there's nothing separating us from uh, it's
It's
I
so
don't know.
good. It's
Yeah,
so good.
Yeah.
But
What
yeah,
an
the
ending.
whole I don't know. I think the whole dynamic between Brando and Sheen, and where Brando knows that what he's come to do is really great. That the whole
Yeah, that's a
dynamic
good
of them,
point.
kind of the battling of, and there's no like physical confrontation really. He's put in the thing or whatever, but it's really just like the tortured souls kind of battling in his mind thing, and he finally ends up killing him, and it's I mean it's so good.
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
Um,
So
any
good.
any final comments before we wrap? I do want to say we should definitely acknowledge that Francis Ford Coppola's wife, Eleanor, we have to thank for so much of
Shout
this
out.
documentary footage. And this
Yeah, privately
awesome
recording her
documentary.
conversations with Francis without him knowing is so
Yeah,
based. So it's so
yeah,
cool.
absolutely. Yeah, I just figured that I felt the need to mention her because we get this fucking awesome documentary thanks to her. So
Yeah, base as hell. And the last kind of bit, it's not important, but I just want to throw it out there for you guys to know. Is like the reason why in the movie we never see Marlon Brando and Dennis Hopper, and it works well in the movie, but it's accidental again. Marlon Brando or Dennis Hopper
yeah,
in the same scene is because Marlon Brando fucking hated Dennis Hopper so much on set that they couldn't be in the same room, and
It's
Marlon
so
Brando
good.
refused to fucking talk to him after a couple of days. So that's why they didn't shoot any scenes together.
But I think again it does work like because it's like they're so polar opposites in the way that you kind of meet these characters. You'd be like, yeah, this guy would hate this guy. Like there's
Yeah,
it just wouldn't like, yeah. So it's kind of funny that they just don't share a scene together. But I think it
yeah.
works.
But
yeah,
Apocalypse Now,
absolutely. Yeah, great movie that we all like.
thumbs up.
We're gonna take a little break and then we're gonna talk about some news before we're done.
Yeah.
All right, we're back talking about news. Except Doug is not here anymore. Doug had to leave us early, so me and Owen are just gonna talk about news for now. I think I just wanted to bring up. I guess I don't have a specific headline for this, but I thought a good place to start obviously would be that we mentioned that there was a potential writer strike 2 episodes ago, and now that has
The writers have been
yeah,
striking.
the writers are striking. Yeah. So I just thought that would be something to bring up because obviously we mentioned 2 weeks ago how this could affect things, and we are now going to see it affecting those things. Obviously, we don't know how long the writer strike is going to last, but there's already shows holding out. There's I
Ton of
mean even
stuff.
shows as big as Stranger Things, like the Duffer Brothers said they I think they said that they have a script already, but they refuse to start filming until the
Yeah, something like
writers come
that.
to an agreement, which, very cool from their end. And a lot of stuff like that across the board, a lot of solidarity from pretty much everybody in Hollywood and even people who aren't writers going to support the writers strike. So hopefully the writers get,
But
a deal that is
some
good.
stuff is like, nah, we're fucking trucking along.
Yeah, well,
It's like,
so I know, what was it? House of the Dragon said that they,
yeah,
um,
which is like we're just not gonna have the writers on set, but we're in a
Yeah.
shoot,
Which
which
I mean,
really
any
frustrating.
show that decides to take that route, I think is going to have a very bad season of television.
Yeah,
But we'll
yeah,
see.
whatever floats their boat, you know.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, we've had, I don't think we need to talk about it in too much detail on the podcast because we've had a lot of conversations about
Yeah,
this
yeah.
already in private. I've already mentioned, and I don't know if everybody like listening to the podcast knows this about me, but obviously, I have a degree in screenwriting. That's what I want to do with my life. So, and make a career out of it. So this writer's strike is, very important to me because I want to know that I have a future in this
Yeah.
industry and the thing that I want to pursue. So obviously I support the writers like greatly, and hopefully we get an agreement that benefits the writers and screws over the CEOs because they're greedy and we don't like those guys. So yeah, just figured it was worth bringing up to give a little update about it. So that's where we're at right now. If there's any like major things in future weeks, we can, talk writer strike stuff a little bit more. But just to get into some more specific headlines, I know we mentioned, I want to say it was last week that I brought up Gladiator 2 stuff. We had a little addition this week that Pedro Pascal is now also joining the cast of
Yep.
Gladiator 2, which
Like
for
his
me is
first big
awesome.
movie.
Yeah,
Pretty much like he was in
he is a big TV guy,
yeah,
really.
yeah, he was in Game of
Um,
Thrones and the Star Wars stuff, but like this is a big fucking movie.
yeah, no, I
Which
mean,
is
and
cool.
the more that this cast gets added to, the more it feels like a massive movie.
Yeah.
And now that I'm looking at it, he has been in some, I guess, pretty big movies, but like he was in one of the Wonder Woman movies, which if you're looking at it in
Oh
terms of
yeah, I remember. I
like
forget that. I
like
didn't see
blockbuster
that. I
stuff,
didn't
and
see that movie.
he has a pretty cool character in the Kingsman movie,
Okay.
but
But
yeah, I
this
don't
is I
know.
mean this is
Yeah,
big. This
when you
is
think
big.
like recent memory, it was really just that the Nicolas Cage movie, Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent, which
Yeah,
is
which
I mean,
yeah, yeah.
not a great movie, but he
Yeah,
was
yeah.
funny in it, I guess. I'm excited because the
Yeah, I
more that this
like him.
cast gets added to, I don't know, yeah, like where do you even stand on Pedro Pascal? I guess because you haven't really seen him
Well,
in
that's the thing. It's
TV.
like I have no issue with him. I really don't. I didn't watch The Mandalorian or Game of Thrones or anything. So it's
Yeah,
it's not someone you know I'm in love with. But I think I'm totally for him being in good
yeah,
stuff. Like I'd love to see him in good
yeah.
stuff. That's for
I
sure.
mean, I would even like just advise you to watch like because he's not in Game of Thrones for a very long
Yeah,
part
yeah,
of this show. But like I imagine him being in Game of Thrones is part of the reason why they
yeah.
want him
It's
in something
probably a
like this.
similar
Because
kind of
if you look
stuff.
up his Game of Thrones scenes, he is fucking awesome, dude. Like
Yeah.
I hope we get to see him fighting in this movie because he's just so fucking cool. I'm a big Pedro Pascal fan, obviously. I think it'll be interesting. I think it seems like the more they add to this cast, it just all kind of makes sense. And my hype is just
Yeah.
kind of growing for this movie a lot. So
I think Ridley in this kind of weird late career is cooking, so I'll let him cook. Okay?
yeah, yeah,
I'm excited.
you're a big Ridley fan.
Yeah, shout out Rid.
I gotta start watching his movies, I guess. I gotta catch up because I mean he did House of Gucci, right? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I could not stand that
Yeah,
movie,
that's
but I
the one
imagine
that
I like
like
other stuff.
that's the one no one really cares. Well, some people actually, I don't know.
Some people
I
really
do
like that movie.
yeah, some people like it, but it's one of his like it's gonna the one that people point to and be like he's fallen off,
Yeah.
where he's made like a ton of stuff recently that is that I haven't seen House of Gucci, but a bunch of the other stuff he's made recently is are really good. So I would
Yeah.
definitely recommend checking his other stuff out.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I'm definitely gonna do a
And
little.
Napoleon coming out later this year.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. I'm like, I'm gonna have to
he's
do a little Ridley
he's
Scott catching
cooking.
up. Yeah. Okay. We can talk about the next thing, which is this I just thought this was interesting to bring up just because of I guess like the potential for if things went differently, I guess. There was a report that Haley Lou Richardson said that she
Uh,
passed on meeting with the producers for Midsummer after she got sent the script because she said that she had just done Split and she didn't want to do another disturbing movie,
yeah,
which I think it's just interesting to think about how things would have gone if it was Haley Lou Richardson
probably
instead of
worse.
Florence Pugh. Yeah, I mean, I'm a
um,
Haley Lou Richardson fan. I've been a fan of her actually longer than I've been a fan of Florence Pugh, really, because Haley Lou Richardson was in the Edge of 17 movie that I brought up. I think I mentioned it last week, and I was like, and she called my attention there, and I was like, oh, I really like her. And I've liked her in everything I've seen her in. So I don't know. I don't
I think
think that
she's
she's the
fine in
actress that Florence
Split.
Pugh
I
is.
Yeah, I don't know. She's cool. I don't think she's anything like
Yeah. I
Florence
think it's
Pugh's.
just,
Obviously, just
yeah.
like
Yeah.
it's Florence Pugh.
Yeah, I think it's interesting to look at it from the perspective of like this is kind of the movie that really like launched Florence Pugh into like stardom. You know what I mean? She is this huge actor now, like
Yeah, Dune
very
too.
well known. Yeah, very well known. So it's like if that was somebody else, would it have been the same trajectory? But I don't know. Just interesting to think about. I thought we should bring it up
Yeah.
because that was a little thing, and it's one of my favorite movies. Obviously, like I have my little Midsummer poster, so it's like wonder what that would have been like. But um, next little thing we have is Emma Watson says that she'll be returning to acting. She said
Oh.
that she wasn't very happy, and her quote was that she felt a bit caged, and that the thing that she found really hard was that I had to go out and sell something that I didn't really have very much control over. Which is, yeah, I mean,
The last thing she was in Little Women,
I want to say, yeah, I think
yeah,
so. But
2019.
it's, I don't know. I'm very pro Emma Watson. I
Yeah,
think she's quite good. So I thought we'd bring it up to see.
I didn't see that. Yeah, I'm excited to see her back and stuff. I think.
Yeah, I don't know. I've always liked her. I mean, obviously,
Yeah,
it's hard to dislike anybody from the Harry Potter cast, from my
yeah,
perspective at least, because those are like some of my favorite movies. She's cool and pretty much everything else. I like her in Little Women. I like her in Perks, being a wallflower, because I fucking love that
yeah.
movie. I don't know. Are you a big Emma Watson guy?
Yeah. It's. I think for her, it's been like, I just want to see her in something that I really like outside of Potter, because I think with Dan and Rupert, I think they've done more interesting projects to me.
Yeah,
And Emma's kind of done like the Beauty and the Beast stuff, and she's been in a lot of like crappy projects too.
yeah,
But I think she has talent, and I'd like to see her in great stuff. I think she can be. But she just, and
yeah,
also she hasn't been doing a lot recently, obviously. So yeah, I'd be excited to see what projects she ends up getting casted in, because she will be in
yeah.
projects.
And part of that
She will be
report
getting
was
work.
that, yeah, part of that report was that she has a movie that
Okay,
is like that she's signed on for.
it
So
doesn't. But
I
it's
don't,
like
yeah, I don't
not.
know what
Yeah,
the
yeah.
movie is,
Okay, cool.
but we know that she's
Yeah,
involved in something.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so I'm sure we'll
Awesome.
find out what that is like down the road, I guess.
Cool.
But next thing, and I mean, this is crazy because I feel like we're almost just bringing up Paul Mescal like every week now at this point.
It was in every
He's
movie.
just taking over. But yeah, he's gonna be playing William Shakespeare alongside Jesse Buckley, who is also
Oh
amazing
yes, 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 yes.
in Chloe Zhao's adaptation of the novel Hamnet, which,
Mm-hmm.
like, I mean, all
Yeah.
three of those names combined are pretty awesome because I like Paul Mescal. I think that Chloe is a good director who obviously,
Yeah.
ended up taking the Marvel route, but like nice
Yeah.
to see her escape that and go back to like a project with two really good actors. Like Jesse Buckley's, I mean, fucking amazing.
Yeah.
Um, so
And speaking of Marvel, the rumor on the street with Paul was he was up for that Fantastic Four gig, and then he chose
mhm.
this instead.
Oh, really?
Because the rumors guys were like, "All right, Paul is in the air still," and then this report came out, and then they're like, "All right, no more Paul,"
Yeah,
which I think rocks
I
because
agree.
I
No,
think taking this role, and because obviously with the whole Fantastic Four thing, that would lock him up for some years. So I think him doing, and he's gonna be locked up for some years. He's in every goddamn movie imaginable, which I think is awesome. I think it's very interesting because I remember knowing of Paul and knowing of like, oh, he's in like two things, and I like this guy.
yeah,
Like I haven't seen Paul in anything. I just know of Paul. But he was in like he's like in Normal People, and he's
yeah.
in
After Sun,
After
obviously.
Sun. But it was like, oh, he's in like one or two things, and now he's in like
everything.
97
Yeah.
upcoming projects,
Yeah.
and I'm stoked. I'm really excited to see all those.
Yeah. And
And I'm excited that he's not gonna be in the Marvel universe just because I think he wants to work and he's excited to work and he's going to work. And we're gonna get
yeah.
a lot of Paul Mescal in the next couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, I just like obviously I'm obsessed with him. Like he's probably just my favorite actor in the world right now. But
Yeah.
it's like, oh,
I mean,
what you said about how it's cool that he decided to turn that project down. If that really is true, it's just like everything you find out about him makes you want to like him more, dude. He's just
yeah.
so fucking cool, man.
Well,
Um,
yeah.
and it's nice to
I
see
mean,
someone with that kind of like integrity to just be like, no, I'm like I'm an artist, because he is a really fucking talented actor. Yeah, I don't know. Him and Jesse Buckley together is a sick casting. I think they're both going to do amazing in that, and they have like a great director behind it too. So that's a very
yeah, I'm excited to
exciting
see what
project.
Chloe Zhao does in the future post Marvel, like
Yeah,
whatever.
exactly. Because a lot of people really shit on Eternals.
Yeah, I
I
mean,
don't even like. I'll be
it's
honest. I like
it's
it more
not
than some
great, but
other people.
I don't think it's really her fault.
No, of course not. I don't think so, at least. I don't know. I think she's clearly very talented. So
Yeah,
I'm excited to see how all that comes together because that seems like a movie that I could end up really liking. Because I don't know. I think Shakespeare stuff is always kind of interesting in movies,
yeah,
I
and
would
it's a
say.
new kind of fresh Shakespeare stuff. Like it's
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like
yeah,
I
I
mean, I
think
really liked the Macbeth stuff that the Coen brothers did just
uh,
recently. So it's like, yeah, I don't know. I think it'll be cool to see. Um, Final little thing I have here is a TV related thing, but I kind of want to mention it just because it's I don't know, I guess just worth talking about. The next season of Ryan Murphy's Monster is going to be
oh
about
yeah.
Lyle and Eric Menendez, which is just like, I don't know. I feel like we've never talked about true crime. So, and like that kind of stuff. So I was like, maybe we should bring this up because it's like, I don't know, curious to see where you lie on true crime stuff.
Well, I don't know. I think true crime's whatever. I don't really, it's not really like my thing. But I think the idea of them trying to create a like cinematic universe
Yeah,
of
of
like
like true
real life
crime. Yeah.
people is bizarre and kind of
Yeah.
feels wrong.
Not to mention how completely insensitive and fucked up the first season of Monster was with Dahmer.
Yeah, I didn't
Um,
watch it.
I mean, I watched the
But
first episode and I was like, I can't watch more
yeah,
of this.
yeah.
And then, of course, like shortly after watching the first episode, I had heard about just all of like the awful ways that they went about making it, where they didn't even contact real people who were depicted in the show,
Jeez.
and didn't, give them any money for it either. Like telling, stories about these real people who were family members of people that were, hurt by Jeffrey Dahmer. So
Yeah.
it's just like, I mean, it's just like an insane thing. And then to like pivot from that to be like, hey, why don't we make this? Why don't we make another season in the same
Yeah.
like under the same name about
This is weird.
two like people who in the true crime world are all over the internet constantly, and find out how we can manipulate that story
Yeah,
to be fucked up.
it's just
um
it's weird.
yeah, I don't know, it's just messed up. I figured I'd bring it up because it's just like, yeah, I don't know, maybe it's good TV. I mean, some people like really like it,
I
and
mean, they eat it
Ryan
up. They eat
Murphy,
it up.
yeah,
But
Ryan
that's the thing
Murphy's like
is,
an
it's
interesting guy
just
to me.
it seems very much like exploitative of these like
Yeah,
the stuff people went through to it because the way they market it and present it is like and the way that people eat it up, it just feels wrong.
yeah.
I don't
Yeah,
know.
I don't know. That's kind of how I have this weird relationship with true crime too, where it's like, it's just like always, it always feels kind of wrong
Yeah.
almost. Like it feels like a lot of these things don't have to exist, and sometimes there is true crime that is thoughtful, I guess,
Yeah,
but
I
it
think true crime
is,
can be. I just think this is like the worst possible version of selling like
yeah,
people who got murdered. Like it's
yeah,
like I don't
exactly.
know.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just, yeah, because it's like, people don't find it interesting, or people find a lot of interest in like, hey, let's explore the mind of like this serial killer, and
Yeah.
it's like, true. I think if true crime was going to be ethical, it would really be focusing on the victims and how they were affected by this person rather than what it's gotten to now.
Yeah.
And
So
then
the
like the
Ethan Evan
modern
Peters
world.
fan cams on
Yeah,
TikTok.
exactly. It's like, and then people dressing up as Dahmer for Halloween. Like, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's like, how do you get to the point
Yeah,
where it's so
it becomes
insensitive
like it.
that,
Yeah, it's very
yeah,
detached.
yeah, I don't know. I just figured that was worth bringing up because I mean, that's just a whole true crime's just a whole mess of stuff.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's our last little bit of news, I guess. So we can wrap up the episode there, and you can follow us on Twitter once again, and join us next week for episode 20. We're going to be doing another episode where we don't talk about new releases. We're going to be talking about the filmography of Satoshi Kon, and we're going to have a special guest. So we'll see you next week.